Oh, man.
Hey,
What's up,
how you doing,
Micah?
buddy?
Good. How you doing?
Not much. I'm fantastic, thanks. Yeah, I'm great.
You getting excited for next week?
Yes, I am.
You had
Are
to
you
think about
flying or
it. You're like,
driving
oh,
out?
no.
Yeah, it took me a
Driving?
second because
Driving to Atlanta? No, I'm not
yeah,
driving. Could
people have
you?
done it.
Oh,
So
God.
it works out perfectly because my wife is from Tallahassee, which is actually where the organization is based, of
Oh,
the
that's
Porch
right. Yeah.
Society of America. And there's a saying in Tallahassee. It's the capital of Florida, but I like to joke with my wife that it's not Golden Girls, Florida, it's Axe Murderer, Florida.
What?
And because
It's
it's like it's very dense pine forests, and there's such humidity that if you were to leave chopped wood outside for a year or two, it would just disintegrate.
really?
I mean, it's very, very humid. And you can't see more than a few hundred feet, unlike where you and I live, where you can see forever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're just it's so dense with trees. So you
Mm-hmm.
never know if a possum or alligator or water moccasin is going to get you, or
Even where
axe
her
murderer.
home was? Even her
Yeah,
neighborhood
I'm
was?
exaggerating a little
Oh,
bit. I like
okay.
to tease her a little bit about how wild, but I remember when our kids were young, we'd go into one story in particular. My kids came in through the front door and went up to their grandmother, my wife's mother, with a snake they had found. And my grandmother said, "Hold on a second, let me look at that." And after about, I mean, a pause that seemed like eternity for me, she said, "Yeah, it's not poisonous. You can play with it."
Oh, my gosh.
Because that's, Florida, northern Florida is it's a tropical pine forest. There is such a thing, and that's what it's like. Anyway, I'm going there for a week, and then when all of my family is flying from Tallahassee to Utah, which you have to go through Atlanta, I'm just staying in Atlanta.
Oh, so you're leaving soon then?
Yeah, I leave tomorrow. There's a saying that when you die in Tallahassee, whether you're going to heaven or hell, you have to go through Atlanta
What?
because
Wha-
there's no
Is
direct
that
flight
real?
to. You have to go through Atlanta.
I feel like you just made that saying up.
No, it's a thing. It's a thing. I did not make it up. I'm not that clever. I promise. I'm not that clever.
That's pretty good.
So, are you excited for
Oh,
the
heck yeah,
Portrait
man.
Society?
It's a nice break every year. I look forward to it. Well, the best part about it is just being around my people, being around people that
Yeah.
think like I do, and just having great conversations for 4 days, staying up late, hanging out in the lobby with our other artists. It's fun.
Getting matching tattoos, Portrait
Yeah,
Society
exactly.
tattoos.
Exactly.
Can you imagine a more finicky group to get a tattoo with than a group
Yeah,
of portrait
seriously.
artists?
Oh, we'd be the worst clients.
You're doing it wrong.
Yeah, exactly. When are you getting there? Are you just gonna be there for Sunday, or are you gonna be there earlier?
So you'll probably see me Saturday night.
Okay.
And then I don't know when we're speaking. I know it's like midday, right? Or is it morning? I don't know.
I don't remember. I think I would assume because is it Sunday? It's Sunday, right?
It's Sunday we're speaking. Yeah.
I would assume it's early because I think it ends at around noon or something.
Yeah. You and I better confirm that. By the time this goes out, it'll probably be like too late.
Yeah, seriously. It's probably around 10 or something,
Yeah.
but I don't know. Who knows? I'll
Yeah.
be there, so.
It's funny. I've had so many thoughts about our presentation because we're talking about the history of portraiture from Raphael to, the 20th century. And, and I am looking at auctions every day. I don't want to give away too much, right? But I run into artists all the time that I think, oh, I should include that. So now I've got what is normally a presentation that has, I don't know, 30 or 40 slides. I've got like 180. I
What
gotta
the
start,
crap,
I
dude?
gotta start pulling back a little bit.
How are we ever gonna get through that?
We're not.
Oh
We're not.
man. And we
It's that old I think Hemingway is attributed with it, but really it was Cicero, the Roman statesman and writer, who wrote this huge long letter to a friend and
Hmm.
said, "Sorry for such a long letter. I didn't have time to write a shorter one."
Isn't that so how it is?
And it's because you don't have time to edit it yet,
Right.
right? And so that's what I am with the presentation right now.
Oh
I have time
man.
between now and then to edit it, but
Yeah.
right now I've just got the long version, which is
I'm
that
just
I haven't had time to edit it.
I'm just imagining me just going through. I'm like, no, the one to the left. No, 25 to the left. No,
Yeah,
300 to the left. You know. Yeah. Don't be too hard on me, man. Speaking of
I
that, I
won't
didn't
be.
get your images ready. What in the heck? I'm slipping today.
I had them. They should all be in order
Okay.
this time.
Okay.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I'm
We've
excited.
been doing this a long time, and I still haven't figured this out. Neither one of us have, but
Neither
that's all right.
one
It's
of
part
us
of the fun,
have, I
right?
know,
People are
seriously.
watching us and thinking like they're probably yelling at the screen. It's the one on the right.
Oh my gosh, you know how funny this is? That you should say that because I woke up this morning and there's this podcast that I'm friends with the host and I've been on their podcast. It's called Woodworking is Bullshit. It's a great name, right?
Okay, that's a great
Anyway,
name.
my brother texted me this morning. He's like, dude, they mentioned you on the podcast. And so I'm listening to it, and the podcast is about ADHD. They were just like, Jeff Hine, shout out to Jeff Hine. It's like, so this is just
I've
another
got
example of my
ADHD too. You
ADHD
and me
going
both,
on, dude.
brother.
Okay, so it's not going to work. Hate to break it to you. Or
What's not going to work? The
maybe it will.
images?
Maybe it will. Let's see. No, maybe it will. Let's see how it goes.
Here's the reason why I wanted them to be in order this time.
Why is that?
Because the artist we're going to be talking about has somewhat similar works that he does, if
Okay.
you were not really paying close attention. And I matched up preparatory drawings or color studies that he did with the piece that corresponds to it. And it would be really hard. I mean, we can figure it out, but you've got them, right?
I've got him. I'm ready to go whenever
Okay.
you are. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's the artist that we're talking about today. Before we start, I want to read a quote. And we've talked briefly about this quote in the past. I don't think I've ever read it out loud to you. And it's a quote from the 18th century. Nope, 17th century. So it's about 1667
Mm-hmm.
when this was written. And this is what's going on in the world of the arts in Europe. Is the Renaissance happened in Italy, and Italy has been surpassed economically by France. And the French have Louis the 14th, the Sun King, on the throne. And he has got a lot of money, and he's building maybe the most expensive building ever built in the history of the world. I mean, minus the pyramids, which is the Versailles.
Mm-hmm.
And when he's building Versailles, he imports many Italian artists, painters, craftspeople who are all working on the project. And a few people get together who are part of this project that are French and Italian, and they found the French Academy.
Mm-hmm.
This is a momentous event in the history of art, because previous to this, if you were to study at a school, or you wanted to become an artist, you would go to an artist workshop, and artists belonged to guilds, and the Guild of Artists had to give you a certificate to say that you had joined the guild. And in order to join a guild, you'd have to do what they kind of talk about today, even in being a woodworker, an electrician, or a plumber. You study with somebody for your apprenticeship, then you become a journeyman, which means you leave the person that you've been working with, and ideally for a period of time go learn skills from another person, and then you apply for your master, which is or you become certified as that person. And so almost every artist had to go through this, and you didn't have to be of high birth to do it. You could be pretty much anyone, as long as you could afford the fees to work with the master, or you do hard labor for the master to become an artist. And in the 17th century, with the French Academy starting, they really changed this model. They
Mhm.
create an academy and they intellectualize arts education, and it becomes an aristocratic pursuit. So the good side of this, there are bads and there are bad and good elements to it. The good is that now art is being seen as a noble pursuit along with medicine, philosophy, and the people who are dedicating time to it are being taken extremely seriously. The
Mm.
bad news is that it's hard to get in the club now. You have to be kind of an aristocrat to be a member of the academy. And on top of that, they start creating a lot of philosophical tracks about what makes good or bad artists. So this quote by Andre Felibien is one of the most notorious quotes in the history of art. Um, it is he's one of the founders of this academy, or one of the main critics and thinkers about art in the 18th century, and it gets quoted a lot over time, and it maybe is less him imposing the rules of what makes a great artist than it is him describing the world that he lives in according to how the academy sees it. So
Mhm.
here's the quote: "He who makes a perfect landscape is above another who only paints fruit, flowers, or seashells. He who paints living animals is worthier of estimation than those who paint only things that are dead and without movement. And as the figure of man is the most perfect work of God on earth, it is also certain that he who becomes an imitator of God by painting human figures is much more excellent than all others. However, even though it is no small thing to paint the figure of man to appear as if alive, and to give the appearance of movement to that which has none, nevertheless, the painter who only paints portraits may not pretend to the honor accorded to the most learned. For that, it is necessary to progress from the single figure to the representation of several together to depict history and myth, the virtue of great men and the most elevated mysteries."
Mm.
So this is known as the hierarchy of art. So at the very bottom is decorative painters. And then above them are still life painters
Wait, what's a decorative
who do
painter?
flowers. A decorative painter would be, you go into somebody's house and they have borders painted around
Okay, gotcha.
the ceiling,
Oh, I wouldn't
right?
even put that in the
Or,
same
or
category. Okay,
flourishes, right?
gotcha.
So that's the lowest of the low, right? And you shouldn't even pay them. They should be grateful they're you've even invited them to come along. And then you've got still life painters, and then you've got landscape painters, and then you've got natur mort, which is like dead animals and life, right? Because you have to have some understanding of animal life there. And then you've got animal life. And then you've got, finally, you get to humans. And then when you get to humans, you've got layers of people who are good as painters. You've got
Mhm.
at the bottom everyday people, and then above that re, uh, royalty or religious figures, and then above that you've got multifigural painting, and that should be historical, allegorical, myth, religious. And the reason in his day that was considered to be the highest wasn't only because of the difficulty of doing it. It was that if you think in the 17th century, the literacy rate was probably around 5%.
Mhm.
And so if you're painting mythological or allegorical or historical scenes, you're also literate, which means that you're educated. And it also means that your paintings in that world, when people see them, they become the way that people become better humans through your art, because the majority of people can't read, but they're looking at your work in
Mm.
order to get an interpretation of literature that they don't have access to, right?
Mm.
So there's this hierarchy really ruled the academy everywhere in Europe for many, many years. And there were always exceptions. But the idea was the job of going to the academy is to do eventually multifigural large scale painting. Why would you do all those years of study just to do still life or landscape? In the mid 19th century, they realized that landscape painting has the same level, if not the same level of complication as doing a figurative work. And so the Prix de Rome and the highest prizes that were only associated with multi-figural paintings, they start creating a separate prize for landscape painting and separate scholarships to go study at schools because they realize that landscape painting is just as difficult in its own way. There's just inherent problems with making these categorizations, right?
Yeah,
But I
it's
mean, would you
very.
agree that we kind of live with this today still as a legacy, like this judgment?
It's funny you should ask that because it just came up. Well, I brought it up in the Scott Waddell podcast, but I don't remember why. I do. I think it's crazy. Is that what you asked me?
No, I'm just saying, do you think it exists? Do you think we live with the legacy of it?
Yeah, I think it's there still a little bit, but I don't know that it's that. I mean, I respect all great painters in every genre, but I don't think that it's necessarily wrong. My experience having done all of those things is that multi-figure is by far the most complicated.
Yeah.
So, and the human figure is more complicated than a still life, and so on and so forth. Now, that's not to say that someone who paints still life could not do a great job doing the other things. That's not the point.
Right. Right.
But some people choose to do a more complicated genre. Some people choose to do a less
Yeah.
complicated genre. But in my personal experience, there's no question. If I could just sit down and do a still life, it would feel like a day off compared to these multi figures I'm doing. As far as my mental strain and stress, it would be
Yeah.
very much more relaxing. I'm not saying it's easy. I mean, yeah, again, I have so much
Yeah.
respect for still life painters, but multi-figure, you're painting still life, you're painting the figure, you're painting the landscape, you're painting everything.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
to suggest that if you piecemeal it and that any one element of multi-figure painting, still life, landscape, or figure, is more sophisticated or more difficult than combining all the elements doesn't make any sense.
There's kind of the argument that they're different sports too, right? Because each sport has its own muscle groups that it works or its own skill set that it works potentially. And it's hard to get at the top of any one sport. So it's hard to get at the top of, still life, hard to get at the top of figurative work. I'm not disagreeing or agreeing with you. I'm just saying that, they're also like the idea that I remember one time I was totally I remember I was giving a lecture on Poussin, the
Hmm.
French artist who you and I are going to talk about one of these days. I'm obsessed with Poussin, one of my favorite artists of all time. And I made the comment that, oh, nobody nobody cares about this subject, this classical subject like Poussin did. And isn't it a shame that we don't live in a day when the majority of people can look at the same painting like a mythological scene and have the same amount of depth or conversation that they read into it because we no longer have a canon in the same way where we're all reading the same literature, we're all looking at the same thing. It was kind of this. Micah was being a little bit of an old classicist fuddy-duddy, saying, can't we all just read Shakespeare together and read like the same things and make art that's based on the same things? I wasn't really saying that, but that could be interpreted kind of that way. I was leaning towards that. I was flirting with that a little bit, right?
Hmm.
And Howard Lyon was on the front row, and he said, "How many people you think have ever read Dante?" And I said, "I don't know. I mean, maybe in the 100 million, maybe more." And he said, "How many people you think have read The Lord of the Rings?" And there's art being made about The Lord of the Rings, right? And now The Lord of the Rings is being considered by English experts as being every bit as important or as canonical as War and Peace or The Brothers Karamazov or the Count of Monte Cristo or
Interesting.
Great Expectations. And so it's been made into a movie, but I think there are a lot of before that conversation, and he called me out on it. I'm really glad he did. I was thinking, okay, we can never consider Frodo Baggins like Virgil or and Dante traveling through the circles of hell, going to Mordor. It's not the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? But maybe that was a little bit of me discriminating, not so much on the multifigural versus still life or landscape. It was me um, discriminating on what I consider the seriousness of the subject, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one way I definitely am guilty of, oh, like I think that maybe this scene that's an historical subject is more important than people wearing blue jeans
Mm-hmm.
in this painting, right? So, I have been trying very hard in my life to eliminate biases based on our hierarchies, like Felabian has created, based on what I think are superficial choices versus what are actual difficult skill sets to master,
Right. Well, one is
right?
subjective and the other could be argued is completely
Right,
objective. Yeah.
right. And so I think that the thing about Felabian and this hierarchy, which I think still permeates art, it's interesting. Like I had a friend who went to the Grand Central Academy. I'm going to leave it nameless, and he was doing sculpture, and he wanted to do a religious sculpture for his final graduating project for his master's degree.
Mm-hmm.
And he was looked down on because religious sculpture was seen as being sentimental and
I thought
unserious.
that was Grand Central Academy.
Yeah, that was Grand Central Academy.
Oh,
Did I say something
I
else?
thought you said Florence. No, I guess
No,
we
no,
have it
no.
on tape.
I did mean Grand Central Academy.
Okay.
And it's interesting because a century earlier it would have been the other way around, right? So
Yeah.
these things kind of like they switch, and it had nothing to do with the skill set. It had everything to do, or the difficulty of what he was proposing to do with that subject. It was a hierarchy based on not on skill, but based on the the perceived seriousness of the subject,
Mm-hmm.
right? Okay, so this is all set up for who I think is one of the greatest artists who's ever lived. He was he was he was Flemish. He lived in Amsterdam, and his name was Jan van Huysum, and he's considered the greatest floral painter of all time.
Yeah.
So
Do you know I had Carlo
let's.
Russo on to talk about Dutch floral painting?
Did you really
I did, yeah.
recently?
Yeah. Well, it was I don't know, maybe a couple months ago. It was a
So
great
hopefully I'm going to
episode.
take a different angle on this because I'm going to
Oh, it'll be
talk a lot
totally
about
different,
methods.
obviously, because you've got your own perspective. But it's going to be fun to
So
talk about this now, having had
so
that
did he
episode.
talk about other people other than Hyacin or just Hyacin?
I can't remember who we talked about,
That's all right.
but Hyasum really rings a bell. And so
So pull up the first image that I've got there if you got him.
okay, let's see.
And I'm going to give you a little bit of a background on Hyacin. So this is a piece that's in the Dulwich Picture Gallery in just outside of London. Hyacin, Jan van Huysum, was the grandson of a decorative artist. In other words, someone who was the lowest of the totem pole and who was not really considered a fine painter. But Jan van Huysum's father, who was named Justice or Justus, was a floral painter and taught Jan how to paint.
Hmm.
And he was considered, he was a master of the guild of local painters. And he also had a brother, Michel, who was a painter, and they came from a long family of painters. You
Mhm.
got to, and what's different what's going on in Amsterdam is that Amsterdam is economically maybe the richest place per capita that Europe has ever seen. It's the capital of the Dutch East India Company, which is famous from Pirates of the Caribbean. But but during the time, the way that they're making money is they regularly they control the trade routes in largely Africa, to India, to China and Japan. And they're bringing things from the East. They're taking things from Europe to the East. And every day ships were being unloaded with exotic food, exotic arts. And one of the things that it creates is an economic environment where people who were previously uneducated and not wealthy could now afford painting. And so not just the wealthy have art in their palaces, everyday people have art in their homes. And it means that there are more artists per capita in Amsterdam and Holland than there are anywhere else in Europe. It was maybe the most dense period of art creation. And these specialists, they started to specialize. So you would become an artist that was known just for doing animals. And maybe if Rubens was known for doing people and you were Schneider, who was an animal painter, you would collaborate on a work where Rubens would do the people and Schneider would do the animals, and then a third painter would do the flowers in a piece. And that makes it very hard for us today to think about, like, I mean, Jeff, can you imagine you're working on one of these religious paintings and you're like, I'm really not a guy who makes boats. I don't paint boats. I want to find the best boat painter in the world. And I'm going to fly him out here and he's going to paint the boat for me. And I'm going to brag every time I do this painting that I did the figures, but I brought the best boat painter out in the world to do the boats. Right? That's the environment that Amsterdam is created. And Jan van Huysum, he is just in the wake of when Rembrandt passes away. He would have, I don't know if he knew Rembrandt personally, but they would have had a slight crossover when Rembrandt was older and Jan van Huysum is a young man and a young painter. Jan van Huysum's works sell, he becomes known as the king of flower painters, and his works sell for many times what Rembrandt sold during his lifetime. He was more famous and more sought after than Rembrandt.
Really?
Yes.
Actually,
and we
that
know
kind of
that
makes sense. I mean, this is the kind of work that is real easy to live with.
It is. And he did, from what I understand, we know of 241 works that he did during his lifetime. And he lived to be, let me see if I've got his age here. He lived to be 66 years old. So let's say that you are, you're working for 40 years of that. Let's argue, right? That means you're doing about 6 paintings a year. He's doing multiple pieces at one time. And don't let me forget to talk about Tulip Mania, which is also part of this. Tulip Mania, it's a very Dutch thing of the era. And he's creating these meticulous works. Now, this work, when I saw the Dulwich Picture Gallery, it was right before there were good digital cameras that I saw this piece. But what I had was a magnifying glass with me. And so I took my camera and I held the magnifying glass up to the painting and I took multiple shots. So look at some of these shots that I took of this painting up close.
Okay, first I got to comment on something. So 6 a year?
Yeah.
So that's 1 every 2 months. That's remarkable.
Yep. It is remarkable.
Because these are really tight. Look at that.
So this is about an inch square, maybe 2 or 3 inches square total.
Oh my gosh. And he does one of these every 2 months?
Yeah. And I mean, and just look at the level of complexity when it comes to value shifts, when it comes to the composition of this work. I mean, how many artists start off with the exercise of paint an egg and do the umbra and the penumbra and here he's got a nest with, and notice there's an egg in the very back that he's completely faded out, right?
What? That's wild. He's got both.
Now go to the next
camera.
one. Yeah, go to the next one. No, keep going over to that.
Oh my gosh.
So zoom in on that. That is about an inch wide. Look at the leaf veins and look at all the colors in the leaf. Look at all the highlighted veins, all the dark burnt umber that he's used, but then also the warm areas. Look at the insect and how varied its wings look. One is foreshortened and one is looking at as almost
Mm-hmm.
flat.
I've been doing Jeff's online mentorship program for about a year now, and it is awesome. Everything is online, super streamlined. If you can be there, I mean, you have the ability to talk to him once a week and he can review your work and help you. If you can't be there, it's pre-recorded. You can go back and even re-watch things if you missed something during class or couldn't be there. So the online portion of it is almost better than real life because you can always go back to it, which is awesome. The demos are recorded. It's just like all available whenever you need it. And I'm a stay-at-home mom of 4 and my time is limited and it's also very interrupted. And so to be able to go back has been clutch for me. And you get to work with Jeff HEIN, who's awesome. He's tough. The assignments are simple, but difficult, and they're difficult to make us all better. And he's able to give us these assignments, coach us through it, help us stay excited to progress. And so it's just been a great experience. I am so grateful that he has been willing to take time away from his own art to offer all of us to have it. So if you're thinking about doing it, it's amazing.
To learn more about how you could have me as a personal mentor, check out the link to heinatelier.com in the show notes or video description.
I had a professor go to the veins of the next one, which is the tulip.
Okay, this is a good time for
Or-
me to make the disclaimer that I should have made earlier.
Yeah.
When I agreed that that hierarchy was somewhat accurate relative to skill, that's when comparing one to one. In other words, a master in multi-figure versus a master in still life. You know, it's not just pluck a still life painter, any still life painter, and any multi-figure painter up. You know what I'm saying? So in other words,
Yeah, I know.
Like, there's no way I can hang with this guy. So I paint multi-figure, whoop-dee-doo. But this is insanity.
It is absolute insanity.
I mean,
and it's just
you can't
and it's the
just put
tiniest
him in
portion.
a lower class because he's
No.
such a master.
I had a professor who who, when I was leaning over and looking at these droplets on the tulip and photographing them, he said, "It's too bad you don't have a microscope because then you could see the amoebas swimming in the water."
Seriously. That's
And
wild.
it was one of those moments where you're like, "Oh yeah." So now zoom out to the larger piece.
Yeah,
You know,
that is
it's
crazy.
this.
I don't know how he did this in 2 months.
So he's not doing it in 2 months. He's doing it over probably a year.
Yeah, but it's 2
And
months. It's 2 months
and
in
so
whole.
he's got. So let me rephrase how we break down that time. He's got 6 he's doing a year, so they're all on easels around him, large.
No, I know,
at
but
the
what
same
I'm
time.
saying is when you sum up all the hours, it works out to 2 months each.
Probably.
Even if you do
Probably
it
about
over
2
a
months.
year, you did 6 that year. So if you break it down
Yeah.
by hour, it's just 2 months, which is mind-blowing.
I'm going to tell you some of the things that we know about what he did.
Okay.
Because this is the funny thing about him is that we know to a point what he did
Mm-hmm.
because he knew that his secret sauce was his these details that he was putting into his works.
Hey, Micah, hold on. You froze.
Okay.
What?
Am I back now?
Man, the second I say you froze. All right, we're good. We're good. So the secret
Okay.
sauce, you were going to say.
So the secret sauce to his work, and he knew it, was the level of detail and care that was taken into his works. We know and I'm gonna tell you how much we do know about his working methods, but then there's a limit because he had students. He trained his daughter, who probably helped him with his work. And he also trained another floral painter, a woman who was popular in England. But even though he trained these people, he was extremely private. So there's speculation that he used a series of magnifying glasses to work on his pieces, and maybe some kind of maul stick that there was a tiny version that would let him like, maybe he had some kind of protractor that was on his easel that allowed him to use very small brushes. And here's another thing. He doesn't have any flat brushes. Flat brushes didn't exist because the ferrule, which is the metal part of a brush, isn't invented until well after he dies. So all artists are using rounded brushes. They're just,
Oh, it's just
different
hair tied to a
hairs that are
stick.
tied to a stick. And so you can get small ones. You can get like, 3 or 4 hairbrush if you want to. And he's also not using any special paint. In fact, I can tell you exactly what paints he has available because I have a chart here. Let me see if I can pull it up. He's got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, roughly 21 pigments.
That's
to
a
work with.
lot.
And out of those 21 pigments, about 8 of them are mineral based. So he's got let's see, I'll just name some of the ones.
How many
so
chromatic
people
colors does he have?
So let me tell
In
you
other
what
words,
he's got.
not earth tones. Yeah, just read them out. Let's hear them.
So he's got ivory black, lamp black.
Okay.
He's got, let's see, I'm trying
He's
to
using
look at
two.
these.
Well, he might not be using both blacks at the same time, though.
He's working Van Dyke brown, it's called, burnt umber, brown umber, Indian red, vermilion, madder, carmine, malachite, green earth,
Wait.
ultramarine.
What's malachite?
Malachite is a stone that's taken from Russia.
Is it
And
pretty
so it's
chromatic?
kind of a greenish stone. Yeah, it's a greenish stone.
Okay.
He's got smalt, which is a kind of cheap blue. He's got ultramarine, which is the most expensive of all the colors. He's got yellow ochre. He's got he's got Prussian blue, which was invented in 1708. It's the first new color of his century, and he's using that a lot. He's got indigo. He's got tin white, lead white, and then he's got tin yellow and lead yellow. And gosh, I can't read what this one is. He's got a couple of ochres. He's basically got 8 chromatic non-earth.
Yeah, I counted 6, but I trust you on that one.
6. Yeah, so that's what he's got to work with. And this is what we know about his building method. So let's put side by side 2 paintings which have a drawing in color or a drawing and the finished work. You should have some things that are matched up. Maybe they didn't stay matched up when they transferred.
No, wait, hold on. So
some of them are, I put them in order, but maybe they didn't stay in order when they got transferred. That's pretty close. This will give you enough of an idea.
Yeah,
right?
but they both look like sketches.
Oh, they're both studies. Yeah, they're both sketches.
Wait, let me try another set. Yeah, so we'll talk after in the future. I'll tell you what you did wrong in the numbering.
Okay.
It's weird. Let's see, maybe this one.
Yeah, you just had that one you had. Go ahead. I'll let you.
Yeah. I don't know, man. It's tough. Wait. Is this one and this one? No. I don't know, man. It's going to be tough. Let's just do a drawing and a painting.
Yeah,
just
do
to
a drawing and a
Yeah,
painting.
how about that?
Yeah.
So we'll do a rough drawing and a painting. There we go.
Oh, you had that one, and then you had that's close enough, right?
Yeah, we get the idea.
So this is what he would do. This is what we understand he would do.
Yeah.
Is he would usually draw something out. Either he would do it in a grisaille, and it was usually usually ink washes mixed with some kind of charcoal or pastel. And he would basically come up with a value map of what the piece was going to look like. And then he would transfer that onto, let me read these exact notes, because these are analyses from the National Gallery in London. Somebody went through and did a really helpful order. So they said, okay, so First of all, he would get a prepared panel or sheet of copper. And there were guilds that would prepare this. He would usually work on a mahogany, oak, or copper plate.
So are these copper
And
plates pristine still?
yeah, yeah.
Oh
And
man, that's
it's great
amazing.
to one of the great things about painting on copper is that it does create a warmth, but you do have to grind it and prepare it quite a bit in order for the paint to stick to it like it does to a rabbit glued canvas, right? So they can also be kind of tricky to work on, and they're expensive because copper now, as it was then, was a very expensive thing to work on. It's just so the most common thing you worked on was oak or mahogany, and then there would be a ground, and the ground that was on these was pretty common among painters that were working in Holland at this time. It was a mix of pigments and oil that were left over from cleaning their brushes. That's what
No
they'd use as the
kidding.
ground.
Seriously?
Yeah.
That's a good
And it
idea.
created, it's a really good idea, isn't it? That's what their ground was. And that's what we know his ground was too. Then he would
Hmm.
repeat this drawing. So he would do one on a piece of paper separately, and then he would repeat it or transfer it using ink, black chalk, graphite, or silver point.
Hmm.
So he just, I don't know why he would choose one or the other, but he'd, work with any one of those. Then he would do an imprimatura. So a very thin, just transparent layer. And it depended on what his goals were. So sometimes he would use a light tin yellow that would
Mhm.
give a yellow hue to everything. Or sometimes he would use, a red ochre. But the idea was is that imprimatur would create just that kind of ground uniform warmth that he would bring out throughout the whole piece. After that, he would do dead coloring. I don't know if you call it that today. That's an art historical term.
Some people
So dead
do. I've
coloring,
heard people use it.
my translation of it is that it would be a solid block of color that he would use, and he would pick out very carefully what those. So maybe in this piece, it would be that red flower up in the top,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or it would be, and it would also be the ochre urn would also have that. And so he would get his very high and contrast dead colors in. Then it would be a very long process of thin glazes of oil paint. And that's what would take the longest, right? And he's working from life, but what we know is that he's doing it over long periods of time. So it's funny, you can do this radiography with his pieces
Mm-hmm.
to see through the different layers. And you can also see what we call pedimenti, which is a Italian term for where things stood. And you can see where in the drawing, he had a stem that was supposed to end in a flower, and he decided not to paint that flower. He just did something else instead. So he would improvise as he was doing the glaze stage quite a bit. And he would sometimes not even complete a flower that he had, or he would invent something totally different. But he would generally stay with the high and low contrast areas that he created as kind of like an abstract shape that he was going for.
Mm.
But it would be impossible. In other words, like one of the things that people ask about this is, how could he possibly have these flowers in front of them and get such a realistic view of what they look like when he's painting it potentially over a year? Well, that's because he'd kind of do one flower at a time,
Yeah,
right?
that's what Carlo
He
talked
would
about. Yeah.
he would literally just like have the one flower with him, and he'd work on that isolated moment, and then he would add in another one, and because he would create the bouquet in the beginning,
Right.
have his drawing, and then he would recreate it, and then no wonder it would shift over that year, because maybe he found a more fabulous flower, or maybe he just realized he liked the shape of something as he was painting it more.
Yeah.
And so he would go with that permutation, and he wouldn't continue to work with whatever he'd initially imagined. So these are improvisations on some level too,
Yeah.
which is what makes them remarkable.
Yeah, and it makes sense he would do such a beautiful and relatively precise sketch in the beginning because it's as though he's creating a roadmap. So he can say, okay, tomorrow I'm going to work on this leaf. So I need to find a leaf that works in that space, or this week I'm going to work on grapes. I don't need everything else. I'm just going to find a bunch of grapes and put them over here.
And he wouldn't sweat it if it was a different grape than he had
Yeah.
before,
Yeah.
because he was just like, you know what? Like, I got this general clump here, right? And I've got the shape. Let's look at a few more of his drawings.
Can I ask you one question though,
and
real quick?
sketches.
Now, so if
Yeah.
he's working in glazes on top of on top of the dead painting, is the dead painting high key? Do you know?
I don't know. I don't know.
Hmm.
I don't know. And you know what? A lot of what we know about his methods we're guessing from
Yeah.
what other artists were doing at the time. But even artists who were alive during his lifetime talked about the secrecy with which he worked.
Oh, funny.
So it's almost like he had an atelier like you've got an atelier, Jeff.
Yeah. But he
But
never let anyone in the
people
back
were
room.
not allowed
Hmm.
to see what brushes he was using, what tools he was using to achieve it. Because if you look at some of those microscopic details, you would have to have almost a surgeon's hand to get all of those details. He had to have something steady in his hands, and he had to be looking through some kind of magnifying device in order to get the it accurate.
It's interesting. Something I discovered that you just reminded me of, which was so bizarre. You see this little cross right here? Can you see it in the
Oh, yeah.
screen? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's not much bigger than my thumbnail, right? And what I did with this cross was I wanted to inlay stone into it, so turquoise. And so what I did was under a microscope with an engraver, I cut out a groove all the way around, and I had to get a rim that was like 0.5 millimeter all around the border. But I did it under a microscope, and it was so interesting because this thing's the size of my thumbnail, and the border had to be completely even all the way around. And what I noticed was, while I was looking through the lens, I was like, how in the world does my hand feel so steady, as though the image I'm looking at, which under the microscope felt like 3 inches rather than a millimeter, all of a sudden my hand felt like it was 3 inches. In other words,
interesting.
yeah, in other words, my brain adapted. It felt like my brain was adapting, and it believed it was 3 inches, and it accommodated making me more steady. I might be reading into it too much, but I'm thinking, I don't care because when I went into it, this is my first time doing something like this. I thought, who cares if I can see it more? How could I possibly hold steady enough to get that precision? Well, for some reason, being able to see it big made my hand steady. I mean, it was not complicated.
That's interesting.
And I don't know.
He
I
would have
wonder
had
if there are
to.
experiments about that or any research on that.
Oh, there's got to be. That's a really
Yeah.
fascinating phenomenon. That's a really fascinating phenomenon. You know, he had to. He would have had to, we think, invent his own contraptions to see what he was painting, like you did under a microscope.
Yeah.
Because this is not an age where you can just go out and buy a microscope, or, I mean, you could commission one to be made, arguably. We don't have proof of any of the tools that he made, but we do know that the brushes that most artists use were not small enough to make the strokes that he made. And we also know that the naked eye would have been very difficult for the naked eye, especially in a time when your daylight's limited. You know, you think about, I remember so he lives in Amsterdam, right? When I lived in London, for several years, during the winter, it would get light around 10:30 a.m. And we're not talking very light. right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it would start to get dark around 3 p.m. again
Oh, that's
in the
depressing.
winter. And so you've got him working not very far from London when it comes to that kind of solar dynamic, which means that he would have had more time in the summer, right? He would have had less time in the winter to do these, to have good light. It's
Yeah,
hard to get, it's hard to have, you can't, there's arguably he's got oil lights, but oil light is still not the greatest to work by. Or a candle light. And so these are being created in circumstances that have a fraction of the control that we have nowadays to make things. And that was part of the delight of these as well, because they were called cabinet paintings. Cabinet paintings is a Dutch term for paintings that people would take and they would hang them on the wall, many of them, but a lot of them was a tradition in Holland with friends at a party to take the painting, hold it in your lap with a magnifying glass and pass it around to look at all the details and talk about all the details, almost like it was a big Where's Waldo game. And so even the experience of looking at these paintings, he's making them to be an almost like discovery experience. And that's where another layer gets to this. So go back to one of these paintings, pick one of the big floral pieces and see if you can zoom in on before we zoom in on the details. Just pick one of the grander floral pieces.
Okay, how about this one? How about, oh,
Can't see any up on the screen yet.
my face isn't good enough?
No, your face is great.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so one of the things that we're missing here, from our perspective too, is tulip mania. Let me just say a few words about this. 16th century, tulips come to Holland from China. And the Chinese got them from Persia, or modern day Iran. And the Dutch are still very well known today for having these amazing tulips. People made or lost their fortunes on the tulips that they were breeding, that they were trading. I mean, there are stories of people trading their houses for a rare breed of tulip that they thought would become the next best-selling tulip that would make their fortune. Tulips would be named after people. You'd be injecting bacteria into tulip bulbs in order to create new varieties. Sometimes they'd fail, sometimes they wouldn't. So the tulips that he's picking are tulips that would have been famous during his day. And poetry was written about tulips. Songs were written about these particular tulips. People would have recognized the particular tulip that he was putting in it. And some of these tulips had assigned to them morals. So if it had white and red, maybe it was a woman that was a fallen woman because she was pure as snow, but then the red was the sin that had come into her life. This is where he turns that hierarchy of art, that the still life is the low and the allegorical multi-figure is the high. He turns that on its head because he makes these paintings multi-figural works. Do you see the fly?
It's
The
remarkable.
fly is sin. The butterfly in the bottom right is the resurrected Christ. The caterpillar is Christ
what?
during.
Wait,
The Christ
how do I
is
know you're not making this stuff up?
Because I mean, some of it we know the interpretations of, some of it we're just guessing at. But we do know that universally the caterpillar was the mortal Christ because it was Christ before he'd been resurrected. That the chrysalis was Christ in the tomb, and the butterfly was the resurrected Christ.
And you
so
and you know that he was aware of these symbols? Is it?
Oh yeah. But here's the thing. This is where it gets complicated. Is that
Okay.
these were generally known, some of these,
Yeah.
but we also know that he would also come up with his own interpretations and work with clients, his patrons who were commissioning these things, to come up with their own interpretations too. And so maybe a posy meant one thing. Let me just read you some of the interpretations that are general from his age.
Yeah.
Tulips, prosperity and rarity. Depending on their color, they may represent passion red or purity white. Wilted flowers, mortality and the idea of beauty fading, a concept that even the most beautiful will change and perish. Poppies, peace. Cloverleaf, good luck. The Holy Trinity with the three-sided one. Lilies, purity and the Virgin Mary. Rose, the Queen of Flowers. The Triumph of Love, the Goddess Venus. Depending on the color, it may be passion, red, jealousy, yellow, purity, white, emerging beauty, a rosebud, or grace and gratitude, pink, iris, death, messages from beyond the grave. I mean, there was such a language of flowers. One of the mistakes we make as art historians is we say that every artist meant the same thing with the flowers they picked. That's not true of Van Huysum, but we do know that we've lost a lot of the interpretation of what his exact works make. The most accurate thing I can say is general, and that's that somebody would have looked at this and seen this as a fun allegory of and generally they had what we call a memento mori, which is a reminder that we all die. There was an ironic idea to the idea that he's painting in great detail all of these ephemeral things. And so you can't have a flower that lasts forever, but you can have a Van Huysum, which makes that flower immortal. And all of us are going to die, but Van Huysum makes these mortal things immortal through his works. And it's a reminder that you're going to die when you look at these paintings. So you see all the insects that are hidden in this piece.
Oh, it's amazing. They're everywhere. Look at that massive fly. I think that's a little out of scale, but that's okay.
Probably.
It's a monster.
Probably. And look at how much of a masterclass it is in abstract form, in shape, in focus, in saturation of color, desaturation of color. I mean, they didn't have cameras at all, right?
Yeah.
But when you're looking at a piece, it almost looks like they have that visual fade, like we are looking, like he's deliberately taking the focus off, right? Of something.
These are remarkable. Do you know this flower right here? I think it was this one that Carla was telling me that a flower like this or this one, I don't know which one, but it has a virus or something associated with it. So it's really valuable, but it was really tough to grow because it would kill the rest of the tulips.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
I've heard that too. Yeah. And that was, as part of the issue with tulip mania is that you'd have these breeds that would be very desirable, but they were super unstable.
Right.
So some of these images are larger than others.
Wait. What the freak? Oh,
okay,
that's the vase.
That's the vase. And this is where he was also
figures in there.
So there are figures on the vase. Go to another piece that has a figurative vase piece.
Okay.
Because there are several that have.
I thought he was squeezing in some sort of actual figure for a second there.
No, go find there. So there's one.
Yeah.
He was trained as a figure. He could do figurative work.
Yeah. I mean,
so
many
he's
of
doing
these
these
still life
kind of
painters can. I mean, how could you? Of course you can if you can paint like this, for crying out loud.
I know, right?
I mean, this kind of painting is the closest thing to multi-figure I've ever seen without actually having figures, because the process is very similar. What makes multi-figure difficult for me, at least, which is why I'm not that good at it, and I'm going to put that out there, but is that nothing is there at the same time. You kind of have to visualize the whole image and then bring in all the components, and that's really hard to do, but that's exactly what he's doing.
Yes.
So it's as though one of these flowers is a model. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes. No, go to let's see if we can get some of those on the far left. Let's just go to a few more.
Yeah. I think this is the artist we talked about. This really looks familiar.
Does it?
Yeah, but that's okay. Another perspective is awesome. Yeah, these are remarkable.
Go to the landscape. There's one landscape. He did a few landscapes during his lifetime. The same painter.
Really?
Same artist. And he wasn't praised for his landscapes. He's looking at Poussin and Claude Lorraine, who are artists at his time. We'll end up talking about both of these artists at some point.
Huh.
And the landscape was just becoming a thing during his time. But, you know, this is a very Italianate landscape. It's that this does not look like Holland. Holland does not have a golden glow. It has very grayish light. So he's inventing this light. He's not going out and looking at it in person. And it's also Italianate in the sense that he's created almost like what looks like a stage where there's a side, each side it's kind of like stopped. There's a middle ground. There's a background where it looks like he's set up a stage set.
Well, okay, I got to back up a little bit. I'm going to challenge you a little bit on the Holland thing, the lighting thing. Well,
Mhm.
maybe just not challenge, a question. How do we know that Holland didn't have a golden light? Because light is affected by atmosphere, and modern atmosphere is going to have smog and other things.
Mhm. So that during his, just before he was alive, there was this group of painters that were called the Dutch Italianate painters. They had
Yeah.
traveled to Italy and they came back and they would add mountains and rocky ground to Holland where it's just completely flat. There is no rocky ground. I think like the average
Oh,
elevation is like 50 feet of
okay.
Holland. And they would create this golden light and these kind of fake rocky interesting
Yeah,
landscapes.
clearly they put a fake
And
mountain in there. Yeah.
and then there was a group of artists that were called the Harlem Tonalists, which reacted extremely philosophically and actively in the way they painted against what they saw as false painting in Holland. And they painted in very drab, grayish colors. And they wrote tracts about how they were deliberately not imitating Italian painting. And so
Really?
we know that he is looking at, in this painting in particular, at these. It looks very much like the Dutch Italianate paintings, Van
That's it, dude. You always
Rysdale.
have the answers, man. That's impressive.
So we know that this is that this is in that camp,
Hmm.
and it's in a way him showing that he's sophisticated. We don't think he really ever traveled out of Holland during his lifetime,
Hmm.
but he wanted to demonstrate that he could master that Italianate kind of painting, just like anybody else who had traveled to Italy. And you know, this doesn't look like this is classical architecture in it. There's a lot of detail. It looks nothing like the floral paintings, and it's probably no surprise that he didn't get a lot of commissions for these. We know of about, I think, there are about 15 or 20 of these. And he gets praised during his lifetime for the small ones, but the big ones people think, because he does some bigger ones that are about 30 by 40
Uh-huh.
that apparently nobody really thought much of.
What do you think
But
of them?
I mean, I think if you see really good painting of these landscape scenes from the time, I think there's no question that there's a lot of careful thought that goes into this. I mean, look at how the foreground is darker, right? And then you
Yeah.
get to there are these highlights that are carefully chosen that lead you to the middle ground, and you can see those figures. And then you get to the kind of back middle ground, and you see the reflection in that calm water of the building. And then you get to that building and has these beautiful shapes, and it's kind of a darker ground. And then it goes back even further. So it's a very complicated set of choices that are every bit as complicated, I think, as his floral paintings
Yeah.
in how he's making minuscule. I mean, look at the leaves on that tree, how he's got the underside of some of them are darker, and then he highlights little air. There's a lot of variation and careful choice, even in the rocks that he's got here. You know,
Mhm.
it's complicated. It's very complicated. Is it as exciting or beautiful as looking at these flowers? You
No.
know,
I love
it's
his
not as,
background buildings.
oh yeah.
The way the light bounces off of them.
You and I are going to talk about Poussin one of these days, who to me was the real master of the genre, along with Claude Lorraine.
Hmm.
But and look at how interesting the clouds are and the shapes that he's created and the extension of those shapes from the trees. I mean,
I think
it's
it's
a
a beautiful painting.
very
It looks filthy though. So
it
it's
is
hard to
it is
judge
filthy.
fairly, I think.
I don't know if it's filthy or if it's that one of the problems when you're
Whoops.
working with a lot of these greens or browns that he has from his time is that a lot of them, if they get too if the oil is not mixed well with the pigment, they get exposed to oxygen, and it essentially oxidizes or rusts the colors
That's what I'm
and makes them all
wondering.
look
Yeah.
it makes them all look brownish. And no painter is um is free from this problem.
Okay.
Um
That's what I was wondering,
so
because I was looking down here and I was gonna ask, because it looks like this painting is really fugitive. It doesn't look
yeah.
like a freshly painted painting through here. So I'm glad you
Well,
said that.
this is why a lot of his flower paintings don't suffer as much from them, because the majority of the colors that stick out to us are the tin and lead and
Mm-hmm.
the ultramarine and the malachite green and the copper greens, which are all mineral based. And
Mm.
those don't really get oxygenated in the way that other things do, even if the oil is inadequate. They still stay
Hmm.
as very stable colors. So I mean that paint that we just saw with the one before, or any of these, the majority of the colors in this are mineral colors that are
Then why
sticking
wouldn't
out.
he just use the mineral colors outside?
I don't know. It's a good question. I wonder if it's because mineral colors just don't make a good landscape. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or the kinds
Or
of landscapes that
was
were
it possible
popular
he
at
was just
least.
mimicking that kind of brownish look of Italian landscape painting?
That's another question that we can talk about in the 19th century when artists start using what's called a Claude glass. We'll talk about it when we talk about Claude Lorraine, which
Mm.
is they didn't know the science of paintings getting older and oxygenating or getting dirty in the way that they didn't know about oxygenation. So they thought that it was a romantic way to paint to make them look faded and brown. And so what they would do is they had a mirror that they would shine on the landscape that they wanted, and the mirror had a dark glaze over the top of it that would make everything look dark and brown and moody and
You're
smoky.
kidding me.
And then they wouldn't face the landscape. They'd have their back to the landscape, but they'd be looking at the mirror image that was reflected through the smoky glass. And they would paint that romantic dark landscape
Hmm.
because they thought that's what Claude Lorraine and Poussin, these Italianate painters, were doing, when really that's not what they were doing. But it's just they didn't understand that that's how paintings aged. So,
Hmm.
so that
Interesting.
there could be an element. Claude glasses, from what I understand, were a late 18th century, early 19th century thing. But maybe he also
But he might have
could have.
just done it
He may
with
have
his
done it
mind.
too. He
Yeah.
could have done it with his mind too. Yeah. I mean,
Hmm.
there's kind of a let's what we haven't really done yet was we
What?
haven't looked at a lot of his color studies. We've looked at a
There
couple of
are
his
they
black and white.
watercolor?
I think some of them are. I mean, maybe
No,
there's
that's
some
oil.
pastel in them.
Wait,
Go
that's
to
let's see.
just pick a
They're kind of hard to tell from here.
that one's oil.
Yeah, what man, they were everywhere a minute ago. Okay, here we go.
So there's one. Yeah, so this is a watercolor,
That looks like
right?
watercolor, maybe ink. Oh no, no. Yeah,
Yeah,
ink.
watercolor and charcoal or ink.
Oh yeah, it
I
looks
mean,
like all
it's funny
three.
'cause
Yeah.
this almost looks like a 19th century or early 20th century illustration, right? It looks super contemporary in a way. I think there is a lot of ink in
Yeah,
this.
there's definitely some ink, but there's also charcoal.
What's what's cool is how
Hmm.
is here how fluid. The thing that fascinates me is most of the time when I look at an artist, and I know they've done extensive studies. This happens all the time when I'm looking at neoclassical paintings like Jacques-Louis David, is I think, oh, their drawing has so much more life in it than the final piece.
Not with him,
There's
man.
just a freer hand, but not with him. And I don't know how he does it because he's meticulous with his painting, but look at how free some of these drawings are up close. I mean, they're just really, really loose.
I suspect he has no intention of using these as art.
Yeah,
They're
I don't think he is
merely a
either.
means to an end.
So for people who are looking at this and wondering what those things are on the side, this is a museum that's got this, has taken a photograph of it, and they've put the color spectrum and the dark spectrum up at the top in order to show that they've taken a color accurate image
And the
of this.
scale at the
So
bottom, which is cool.
yeah, and the scale. So this is a color accurate image
Mm.
of what it actually looks like. This is a museum image. Um, but you know, he's the thing that is also fascinating about this is that I did talk about how as he gets through the oil painting, he does improvise a little bit more. It'd be really cool if you could find because I know I've got the oil for this. If you can find the oil for it, we can see how much it changes.
Let me try and look over here. One sec.
This episode is brought to you in part by Rosemary Brushes. If you're one of my listeners who's a professional artist, you're already using Rosemary brushes. But for the rest of you, come on. Take your work a little more seriously. Stop buying the other brands. It's just not worth it. Every now and then you may get lucky and buy a good brush from another brand, but use the brand that professionals like myself are using. Go to rosemaryandco.com, link in the description or the show notes, and get yourself some quality brushes before your next painting.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So this is a radically this shows how much they can change. So it's the
You're
study on the
sure-
right.
Oh, yeah, I guess it is the same one. It's got the same
Yeah.
tabletop, same vase.
Yep. It's
Oh, no,
somewhat the
similar
same
vase.
right?
Similar vase,
Similar
not the
vase,
same vase.
right? And you
Interesting.
can see on the right how much it's dramatically changed. So this is just one example of we've got on the right the color study, and on the left the finished oil painting. And
What?
you see
I'm
that
skeptical that's the same.
it is I guarantee it's the same. We can find another one if you want to find another example of it, but this is this is a study
So
for it.
just again, I'm not questioning, but I'm curious how we know that it's the same. Is it when it was produced? Is that how we know?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Wow, that's so different. That's
Yeah, a lot of
crazy.
it is crazy, but there are a lot of things that are the same. So you've got the peaches, which are roughly in the same place on the
True.
left.
Oh, that's
right?
true. And then the grapes
You've
right
got
here.
you've got the grapes that are kind of there. You've got those I don't know what the flowers are called that are white that are kind of in the same area. They make a completely
man,
different
you're
shape
right. It might be
later,
the same.
right? And so if you think about what's happened here is that, and it's the same table
He
that's
moved
there.
the
You can see that it
pomegranate
kind of,
and he switched the pomegranate and the blue grapes.
yeah.
What? That's
So
wild.
so you can see that he's made this meticulous study, right? And then he gets into actually, and he probably drew that on the canvas. And then he gets to the point where he starts putting it together, and everything starts shifting, and fundamental elements stay. So you do fundamentally have a diagonal that goes from the top left to the bottom right.
Mhm.
That's still there, right?
Mhm.
And then you've got a smaller diagonal that goes from the top right to the bottom left. But
Mhm.
the dark patches have changed a little bit, right? And he's revealed a basket on the right and put the grapes that are darker because he thought, I want the grapes that are darker over there on the right. And he puts the pomegranate on the left instead. And so it's
Hmm.
almost like you can see him thinking about where it's a better choice as he goes through. He's not a slave to his study either.
Hmm.
And this is where we know he's not using, like, this is where I think for me, the argument that Vermeer, who was kind of his contemporary, was using photography throughout his whole thing breaks down. Because there is almost a photorealistic element to artists who are working in this era. They know how to reproduce things with great detail observing from life. But these paintings are built very slowly over time, one detail
Well, you
at a time.
you couldn't use the camera
Right?
obscura on fruits and
No,
vegetables anyway.
You can't. And so I
Mhm.
think what's happening is that you get maybe it's interesting. I want to bring Vermeer into this for just a second. Is that, maybe Vermeer did create an overall drawing in a space based off of a setup that he made in the very beginning. But he's also, just like Van Huysum is, they're over time meticulously creating these paintings. Van Huysum created 241 paintings over his lifetime. Vermeer does about 40 that we know of, 40 or 50.
Mm-hmm.
And Van Huysum lives 20 years longer. He lives until he's 66. I think Vermeer dies in his mid 40s.
Mm.
By the way, Van Huysum has 12 children.
Holy
three
crap.
of them survive past him.
That's insane.
And his daughter becomes is one of his assistants and paints with him. And so it was a hard life. He was successful, but it was a really hard life. And he's working on these pieces over the long term, but he's going into the studio, like you say, every day, and he's rethinking it. It must have been maddening to be his assistant on some level, right? Because he's such a perfectionist, I'm sure, that they're like, no, just leave the grapes there. They're great there, right? And I put the dead color there. And he's like, no. I like the grapes on the other side. Let's move the grapes on the other side. No, but we planned it. We worked very hard. And I went out and bought the grapes today to look exactly. No. Let's switch it and go over here, right?
Mm-hmm.
It would have been a maddening process probably, but that's what makes him the king of still life painters, is his exacting, and look at how he's taken out the busyness where that red flower is in the midground in like the top middle left,
Yeah.
right by the vase in the final oil painting. He gets rid of a ton of information in the top of the painting that he had in the study. He just removes it and he makes it almost monochrome green in the top left where he had all these other colors before.
Mm-hmm. Which one do you like better? Compositionally?
I couldn't choose.
I couldn't either.
couldn't
I'm trying to
choose.
figure out if he improved on it or not. I honestly kind of think the study was better.
I don't know, man. I mean,
It's hard to tell because you're comparing a study to a painting. But I like the asymmetry of this one, where the top third of the painting is very sparse. I mean, I guess it's sort of that way here too, but it feels different on this one.
What's interesting about the color study to me is that it's easier to follow the color relationships as they flow through the painting, like those warm colors versus the cool colors.
Yes, that's what it is.
It's a little easier to like see the S shape of those roses that go all the way down to the peaches and then curve right back down to the pomegranate. It's like a big S.
I agree.
You can see that old idea that the modernists use, that all paintings are abstract on some level. I dare an abstract painter to make something this complicated, right? Like this is a pretty incredibly abstract, from an abstract level of color choices and value shifts. Holy crap. That's a pretty incredible piece.
Yeah, I'm going to click off of this one because I got to zoom into this flower real quick. These flowers right here are blowing my mind.
Well, look, and you just found the fly.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
God, I would
look at the drops
like
on.
And stare at it every day.
You can fall into them, can't you? I mean, they're meditative.
And this isn't even one of his best, in my opinion.
Look at the grapes and look at how transparent they seem in the foreground, but then once they fall out of light, how opaque they look.
Yeah.
And that is an observable phenomenon, right? When you've got light shining through something, but then when light's no longer shining through it and all of a sudden it's opaque.
Right.
I mean, he could have probably written tracks on the science of light.
Well, and one of the things we talked about with Carlo Russo is that he fakes the light a lot. Carlo does, and remind me this guy's name. I'm going to forget it again.
Jan van Huysum.
Jan van Huysum. I don't know how I could remember that name. It's a hard name. Jan van Huysum.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Jan van Huysum and Carlo Russo, I think, well, I know Carlo does. He said he did. And he also pointed out that this guy does as well, but faking the light. Like, for example, the flowers back behind the grapes, in order to silhouette the grapes, are light,
Yes.
but they should be in shadow. They're completely buried by objects.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good observation. And I don't know how he doesn't. I remember having a conversation with Jacob Collins years ago about theories that he and scholars have on how Caravaggio created harsh light through um, candle and torch or a kind of oil light that was reflected off of metallic surfaces to create high contrast. Um, there were ways of creating contrasted light before there was electricity, and I think that he probably had the equivalent of what we've got with like shadow boxes that he set things up in, of course, right? So he's controlling what light is coming in and where it's hitting, so he can paint over it over a long time without the light consistently changing on him.
Mm-hmm.
Probably at a north-facing studio, he's probably painting consistently on, like if he's got 4 or 5 things on easels, he's probably consistently working on things at the same time of day to make sure that he's controlling a little bit about the same light.
Mm-hmm.
But he's probably like you and Russo are saying, there's a lot of it that just isn't obeying the laws of what he's actually looking at. He just, for the sake of shape, he's choosing where light is
Mm-hmm.
falling and not on a
Mm-hmm.
piece, and totally inventing light hitting something
Mm-hmm.
or not. which which is another thing of like, this is where, when people say to me, and you've heard me say this in other episodes, I hate it when people look at a painting and say it looks just like a photograph. I'm like,
Yeah.
no.
I know.
Because photograph, because this isn't how real life looks. He's really editing reality, and it's absolutely invented in many ways. A photograph of this subject would not look anything like it, because the light would be totally different, and all the shapes would be different, and would throw off the whole composition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I always take that as a compliment because I know they mean it as one, but
They do mean it
Yeah.
as one. Yeah.
but it's yeah, it's not exactly what most of us are after. That's for darn sure.
No. Hit a couple more of these larger.
Oh wow, I
Um,
like this one. I like the space
oh,
in this one.
yeah, it's a little more. There's a lot more air in it, isn't there?
Yeah, it's easier on the eyes. It's Man, that leaf on the top is so realistic.
See how far you can zoom in on this. I don't know how high quality. I
Man, you
try to
got
get
some
really high
great
quality.
photos this time. Nice work.
I mean, it is very hard to get a lot of good images of him. I'm grateful to a few sources online that have them.
Wow, look at
Joe,
the
look at those
ants
pomegranate
and the
seeds and
little
the ants. I mean,
flies. These look like so much fun.
look at the
Oh.
complication of that interior of the cantaloupe. Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh, it looks like bowels. It's just it's so wet. Look at that.
It is, and it's really like and look at that leaf. It's the raspberry leaves. I mean, I garden and
Jeez.
I've got raspberries. That is exactly what a raspberry leaf looks like, and they hurt if you haven't been gardening all year and your hands are still a little soft.
Mm.
I mean, they hurt to touch. And then those dead leaves, which are in the foreground, which are the plum leaves that he's got in front of you. And then look at the insect that's crawling on the backside of the plum. Plums are so interesting to paint because look at that chalky surface, which
Yeah.
builds up on them. It's such an interesting contrast with these other fuzzy fruits, which it's hard to see in a photograph. In person, a piece like this looks even more spectacular because he somehow created the peach fuzz compared to that chalky surface of the plum.
What do you know about the water droplet thing? It's
How he did that?
Well, no, not how he did that, but it just seems kind of like a trend in this type of still life painting. And clearly water droplets.
I think it was meant to make it look like it was like such a fresh, ephemeral moment that he captured. And
it does.
I think it's supposed to exacerbate the idea that life is just a passing moment, you know.
Yeah, that's good.
And this is this is a moment that's frozen forever.
It
I
really
just
does
can't.
add to it. It's like magical, those little drops.
It's
Yeah, this is
He's one of these artists that if you know him, you know to stop and look at it for a long time. But I'll be in a museum, and the still life painters people just walk by him. They look at him for a few seconds and then they just keep going.
Doesn't he have a whole room, or at least a big part of a room in the National Gallery in London?
Yes, yes, and that's thanks to uh, one of our one of my mentors, Johnny Van Aften, who is the world's greatest dealer in Flemish and Dutch paintings. His room, I believe, is the room that they have the Van Huysums in that he
Yeah.
sponsored.
Okay. It's not a
He
big
he re,
room. It's only maybe 20 by 20 or something like
yeah,
that.
not a big room, but every one of them is a knockout. I mean,
Oh,
there
Jen
you
and
just
I,
walk through.
oh, that whole museum, that's where we spent the most time, which shocked me because I'm a figurative painter. I thought for
Yeah,
sure, well, I mean, I never suspected that I would stop in this little room for so long. It just
yeah.
sucked me in. It's remarkable.
They are. I mean, I don't know.
Oh, look it. That is the coolest.
Yeah, suck it. Hierarchy of art. He has an animal in there.
He's
He's not just a
totally a
still
nature
life.
painter. That is the best little mouse.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's now my new
Well, and
favorite.
if you think that if somebody looking at this would have thought of it almost like a morality play, that each one of these is a little symbol of something, right? Like
Hmm.
the snail is Christ or Saint Peter or whoever it was. You know, every one of them is good. And there's another snail that's right there on top of those grapes.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
man, these are so great.
I I encourage everyone to throw away um, old biases in the hierarchy of art when it comes to subjects, which I think you and I, set up at the beginning of the conversation. It comes down to skill sets and execution, right?
Yeah.
And I think that in his day, remember what I said in the very beginning. His paintings were selling for 5 to 10 times what Rembrandt's paintings were during his lifetime.
Wow. And Rembrandt,
That's
my understanding is Rembrandt was rich too. Well,
He was rich.
well, for a time, he spent all his money.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But he was highly prized as an artist. And
Yeah.
so here you've got a still life painter who at a time when the hierarchy was absolutely a bias that almost everybody had.
Hmm.
We don't have it as much today as they did then. He was making more than the successful figurative painters at the top of that hierarchy. His works were He was a waiting list for his works. They were going directly to crowned um, queens and kings and princes and princesses of his time, and you'd be on a waiting list for 4 or 5 years to get one of his paintings.
Hmm.
And sometimes I don't know if people. I know that there are a couple pieces I know we've got works on that he would actually collaborate with people about them, but for the most part, you kind of get what you got, is what I understand from it.
Hmm.
And that was also an upending because artists were usually not seen as the deciders. They were seen as basically being servants who were told what to do. They weren't seen as geniuses, but he was one of those rare artists who was seen as a genius in his day. And you would get it and you'd have a great unveiling and you'd invite your friends over and you would all spend hours talking about the details of it and your interpretation of what the flowers meant or the fruit meant, or why is this flower wilted, or why is this mayfly on there that only lives for a day and it's right next to uh, a butterfly, and what did that mean? And it would have been a real experience to get a Van Huysum and sit around and talk about it. Today we have television and we've got the internet and all these interactive things. His was as close to an interactive work as you could possibly get previous to the
Hmm.
modern era, because you'd sit in front of it and the more you looked at it, the more it would give you.
Yeah, he's amazing. You know what I'm left thinking about is I'm working on a painting right now, and I'm trying to decide loose, tight, loose, tight. You know, am I focusing on the brushwork or the illusion? I mean, it's always kind of a balance. And when I love loose painting. People like Daniel Keyes, for example, who's going to be at the PSOA this week, coming week. Man, I just love his approach to still life. But then I look at this and it's like, or Carlo Russo again, and it's like, oh my gosh, this tightness is so enticing too.
Are you familiar with the painter Fontaine Latour?
Yes. Yeah.
So Latour, look up Latour, Fontaine Latour still life.
Okay. Is he the perfect balance between the two in your mind or something?
I think he's the perfect loose painter. And I don't think that his work was as complicated as Van Huysum's. He certainly painted much faster.
Okay.
And if you want me to spell it, I know that I'm using the French pronunciation.
Yeah, how do you spell it?
Fantin space LA space TOUR.
Yeah. Thanks for helping me out there.
Yeah. And pull up one of his floral still lifes. He's working in the last quarter of the 19th century.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and if you zoom in, I don't know if you
I don't know
can
if I
zoom in on one of
can.
these works.
View image.
They're extremely loose compared to the pieces that we're
Yeah.
seeing of Van Huysum. But I don't think that they're still very complicated in the choices that he's making. Very complicated in the
There's
choices.
so many ways to do beautiful paintings.
And so, like, if you say, like, is it better to do loose or is it better to do tight? I don't know if there is, like, I mean, I don't think there's a better than, but I think that he's a good example of how looseness really worked too,
Yeah, I agree.
right?
Yeah, his
And
paintings are gorgeous.
and we'll talk about Fontaine Latour. You know, Fontaine Latour hated these still life paintings near the end of his career because what he wanted to be is a monumental figurative painter who did multifigural allegorical scenes. But his work was so popular in England and in America that he couldn't turn down the commissions for another still life. It was basically like printing money. And so he was kind of like Sargent was sick of doing portraits. Fontaine Latour was sick of doing these still lifes. And even now, that's what he's remembered for.
Yeah, we got to talk about him. That sounds
We
good.
will.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, do you know where you're going to land with your work when it comes to
No,
doing it? Or are
I
you
mean, I
still
got to
thinking
stay
about
on
it?
track, right? Because I
Yeah.
kind of got my thing going. But what's frustrating about being an artist and even having a podcast like this is I want to do what everybody's doing, and there's just not enough. There's not enough time in one person's life to do even a couple, much less all of it. And so I could
Yeah.
see why he went out to do this Italian style landscape, because it's so enticing when you look at all these brilliant artists out there to just want to dip your toe in all of their experiences. And
Yeah.
I can't, but there's just no time for that. You got to stay with what you're doing, you know?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
But it's nice to know that we appreciate it, right?
Yeah,
Is that
amen.
you love it and appreciate it.
yeah. Well,
So thanks for letting me talk
heck yeah,
about Van
man. This-
Huysum, even though Carlo Russo talked about him before. I hope this
No,
was
this is
different enough
great.
from the conversation you had.
This is great. Thanks again, man. And so we'll see you. Have a safe trip to Florida. Enjoy the humidity, and we'll see you in a week.
Thanks, buddy. Yeah, you'll see me then.
All right.
And
Take
I'm
care,
looking
man.
forward to it, buddy.
All right. Take
Ciao.
care. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Undraped Artist Podcast. If you enjoyed it, subscribe. And if you could, leave a comment or review. That really helps the channel. Please share the show with your friends, and if you're feeling generous, consider a monthly donation at theundrapedartist.com. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next week.